action is taken. In this police station, 15 years ago, there was a terrible miscarriage of justice. Some detectives broke the rules in a murder hunt. Not one of those officers has ever been punished for it. But tonight we can reveal that retired Detective Inspector Stuart Lewis will have to appear before a jury to answer allegations about the way he ran the inquiry. Detectives were investigating the brutal murder of Philip Saunders, a Cardiff newsagent. Police soon had 3 men in the frame: Michael O'Brien, Ellis Sherwood and Darren Hall. Their rights were supposed to be protected.
In 1986, the Police and Criminal Evidence Act was implemented, and that brought in a number of protections for the public, particularly people who have been detained in police stations, covering their right to access to a solicitor, their right to medical attention if they needed it, and also about the ways they were to be interviewed. And yet, despite that, in 1987, the way these individuals were handled in custody was as though that piece of legislation had never been introduced at all.
The 3 men were convicted and jailed for life. They became known as the Newsagent 3, and almost immediately started campaigning for their freedom.
First thing I realised that by going on hunger strike, which I've been on many, I've been on one for 14 days, 7 days, 10 days, over a long period of time, it generated a lot of publicity.
At their headquarters in Bridgend, the force closed ranks. Internal inquiries in the mid-1990s gave the investigation a clean bill of health.
I think their intention was to sort of like reassure themselves that of our guilt more than anything. And I've had an opportunity to see the 2 reports, and basically they're attacking my prestations of innocence through the media and other channels.
Superintendent Alan Partridge of the Thames Valley Police was brought in to investigate. His report was damning.
He found some startling things during his investigation, that, you know, that we were handcuffed to hot radiators for long periods of time, denial of access to a solicitor, other serious breaches of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, and it just appeared like they were breaking every rule in the book.
The 3 were released, and Ellis Sherwood and Michael O'Brien celebrated their freedom. Their convictions were later overturned. One section of the Partridge report had been into disciplinary breaches, but Partridge's findings about the officers involved were kept secret. We asked the force for a copy. Yesterday, Deputy Chief Constable Paul Wood told us such reports are confidential and do not enter the public domain.
There's always this curious matter of why things are not published. And of course, it's very important that these things are published. It's very important that the public know what's going on. The obvious question is, if you're not prepared to publish a report, is what are you hiding?
This man has read the report. He's a member of the Police Complaints Authority, the official watchdog, and he's not happy the report is being kept secret.
Under the law, that report is the property of South Wales Police, and they can release it if they so wish, but we have no powers, and it's, I have to say, extremely frustrating to us sometimes that these reports can't be made public.
But he agreed with the South Wales Police that no officers in the case should face disciplinary action.
It was a very unusual case because, of course, the incident took place 13 years before the investigation. So in terms of police discipline, which after all is the focus of the PCA, we were always going to be extremely unlikely to be able to discipline any officers.
By that time, Stuart Lewis and many others had reached retirement age.
This is a pattern that when something rather dubious and nasty comes up, people then retire on their full pension. And of course, for the victims of those people who are victims of miscarriage of justice, maybe spent 10 or 11 years in prison, you can imagine how galling that must be.
Well, I share those concerns, and I'm very aware, sitting where I do, how concerned the public are about this, that officers can retire and escape from the regulations. Because, of course, the disciplinary regulations cover the officer as an employee. So once the officer ceases to be an employee, there's very little can be done. But I do understand how people feel about that, and I share those concerns.
There is a serious perception that police officers seem to be untouchable. And I don't think that's in the interests of the police. I think it's a bit of an affront to honest officers, in a sense, to see their colleagues getting away with actions which have clearly resulted in the most appalling miscarriage of justice.
Duncan Gear believes there's another remedy.
They have a right to civil action against South Wales Police, and no doubt the investigation would have been helpful to them in that action.
That's what Michael O'Brien is doing. He's suing the Chief Constable in the High Court for malicious prosecution. Last week he won the right to question Stuart Lewis, not just about his case, but also about other controversial investigations.
Basically what the court said is Inspector Stuart Lewis is going to have to answer to his conduct in relation to our case and in relation to other cases where there was evidence of similar fact of behaviour over a period of time. And what is significant in our case is we want the jury to be able to see the pattern of behaviour of this officer over a long period of time, which is going to be seriously crucial to our case.
Stuart Lewis maintains he's done nothing wrong, but he's no stranger to controversy. 5 years ago, he was criticised for submitting a character reference for a Cardiff barrister, John Charles Rees, who had been arrested for failing to give a breath test. The reference was not used and the barrister was convicted. An assistant chief constable told Lewis, "Your judgment was poor and the greatest harm has been done to your reputation and integrity." Lewis left the force, leaving a record of 28 complaints, none of them proved. But Dorset police later criticised one of his investigations, saying, had he not retired, there is sufficient evidence to have merited disciplinary action against him. Yesterday, the force said it had no comment to make on the Newsagent 3 case. Stuart Lewis also declined to take part in the programme. We also asked Chief Constable Sir Tony Burden for an interview. He declined. This is the 4th time he's turned down offers to appear in programmes about his force. We did talk to him about miscarriage cases last year.
It's not a problem because these matters have been properly investigated.
But there are plans that could see police losing control of the complaint system.
There have been concerns, I think it's fair to say, ever since the PCA was created, about the police investigating the police. And indeed, Scarman, in his report into the Brixton Disorders, which resulted in the creation of the PCA, recommended that the police should not investigate the police.
A new, tougher watchdog is planned to replace the Police Complaints Authority.
Well, it'll certainly be a substantially bigger organisation than this, and it will have much greater powers than we do. So, for example, it will be able to investigate incidents and allegations itself, which must mean that its investigators will have the power of arrest. It will have powers to go into police forces, to examine their records and their documents on the way they manage the complaints process.
For those who believe they've fallen foul of the police on the streets, the changes can't come soon enough.
I'm not a person who's so arrogant to say that all police officers are rotten. That's not the case. But there is nobody who seems to be looking into things properly.
This is how Katie Green saw the outside world for the first 17 years of her life, through a red mask. Daylight could burn and disfigure her. But in the last 18 months,